What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports, our weekly sports talk show where we give you 10 topics of all the different sports going on across the country, across the globe. I am one of the co-hosts, Pat the Shot Caller Flaherty, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Brendan the Coach Perry. Brendan, how you doing on this hot, sticky, nasty, super crappy? I mean, it's not crappy weather, but it's so freaking hot out. It's uncomfortable here in Massachusetts. How you doing, though?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. It's one of those things where, like you said, in the winter we're complaining about the snow, and then in the summer we're complaining about the heat. But you fans are lucky that I'm actually doing this show with a shirt on because it is that hot out here right now. But I will say big shout out to our super fans, Jack Barrows and Brian Chance. And I also want to give a shout out to one of our new subscribers, Jason Gia. Welcome to the Comeback Sports Train, man. But yeah, big shout out to our fans and our new subscribers. And I got another thing for you. Tonight at midnight, Lionel Messi will become a free agent coming off a 4-year, $674 million contract. That's how much he just made over the last 4 years. Wow.
Yeah, people think that professional athletes in America make a lot of money. Oh, my goodness. And that's going to be nuts at midnight tonight. So we don't have that as an official topic for tonight, but I'm glad you brought that up because that is massive news across the international sports globe. Now, folks, before we get going, as usual, our Twitter handles are at the bottom of the screen, so make sure you check those out. Also, at the bottom of the screen, right there in the middle, you can call into the show and ask us a question, give us a comment about how the show's going. You know, one of the topics you might want to comment on. Make sure you call that number. And finally, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to Comeback Sports, this show right here, when our fantastic producer, Ben Kudo, cuts up each individual segment. It goes to that Comeback Sports subscription. It'll just feed right into your YouTube app. You can just watch it right there. You don't got to search for it. It's going to show right up as soon as you go on the subscription. So make sure you do that if you like what you see here on Comeback Sports. First things first here, topic number one, we're going to get into the NBA playoffs because that's the hottest sport right now. They're getting down to the wire here. We got 4 teams left. It's conference finals. And I think a lot of us thought that the Clippers, Brennan, were done. They were dead. I mean, no Kawhi. You know, they picked up one game early, but they were down 3-1 in the series. Then on Monday night, the Clippers come back. Paul George, monster game for him. The Clippers defeat the Suns 116-102. Impressive performance by the LA Clippers when they were in desperation mode.
Yeah, like you called it, desperation mode. It was one of those winner-go-home moments, and playoff Paul showed up, man. There was a couple of moments in this series where we talked about him being pandemic Paul again, especially at the free throw line. But in this game, he showed up big and was consistently knocking down his free throws. So it was just the complete opposite, and then the Clippers got the complete opposite of what they had, most of the series. They went out and got a W and put themselves pretty much back in this series. So it's just really one of those things where I thought with the Suns, especially with Chris Paul coming back, that they were going to look to, put this series in a chokehold and kind of finish it off. But the Clippers really just showed that, they're still hanging around for a reason, and they've gotten this far in the playoffs for a reason. They have good depth and they have good players all around. But Paul George really showed up and showed that he is a star in the NBA. I mean, he dropped a 41-piece nugget on the Suns and was just pretty much getting anything he wanted. Scored 20 points in the third quarter. I believe 20 of the team's 32 in the third quarter. So he really was going off there. And there was a couple of moments where he was just getting it from anywhere he wanted. Mid-range, 3-point, pulling up from off the dribble, driving to the hoop. There was pretty much anything that he could do. I mean, I don't think I saw him miss a shot for, I think he was like 7 for 7 or 8 for 8 until he missed a shot. So he was pretty much on fire. And like I said, from short range, from deep range, from anywhere you want. But I mean, he even got to hit one of the 3-pointers that he hit was kind of a dagger, to be honest, for the Suns. So it was just really one of those things where you got to see that Paul George is obviously a superstar, like we said, in the NBA, and he really showed up in a big moment for his team and put him on his back personally, and kept his team in the series.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I thought the Clippers were done. And like you said, before probably the last 6 maybe Clippers playoff games, Paul George was always considered to not be a playoff performer. You know, you mentioned he calls himself Playoff Paul, but then a lot of, you know, analysts and fans, including myself, were like, well, you haven't done it in the playoffs, so what are you talking about? Struggled in the bubble last year. We always knew he was going to be the second banana to Kawhi Leonard, but, you know, he's showing that he might be one of those top guys. You know, he hasn't been able to do it in the past, but these last couple of games have been very impressive. 41 points, like you mentioned, he had 13 rebounds, 6 assists. You mentioned the 20 points in the fourth quarter when the Clippers need it the most. I mean, when you're losing your top guy and your second in command comes in and just dominates games, that's exactly why they got, you know, Paul George. So we're not sure when Kawhi is going to come back. We're starting to see now in the NBA, throughout this entire postseason, there's been every team's had an injury to a really important player. And we're going to get to a bigger topic in the next section, but about the other series. But you know, when a guy like Kawhi goes out, Paul George steps up, and you also saw some other players from the Clippers really step up as well. Marcus Morris had, or Markieff Morris, I forget which Morris brothers on the Clippers. I always mix these guys up. One of the Morrises had 22 points, and then Reggie Jackson's been excellent in the postseason. A guy who isn't always consistent, but is kind of like that, you know, Vinnie Johnson, kind of the microwave off the bench kind of player. He can score in bunches, and you're now seeing the talent of Reggie Jackson as well. And then DeMarcus Cousins comes off the bench, scores 15 for the Clippers. So, you know, that combined with the fact that I think Chris Paul, even though he's back, we saw a ton of players this year get COVID, and then it took a while to recover. It took a while to get your wind back. It took a while to kind of get your legs back just because of the nature of the pandemic and nature of the disease. So it might take a while for Chris Paul to fully recover to where he was before he got COVID. Now, again, we heard from Jalen Rose that supposedly he got the vaccine, so that means that it probably didn't hit him as hard as one of the other guys that got it during the season who maybe wasn't vaccinated yet. But still, I'm sure it takes some time to get back. So he hasn't quite looked right since he's come back from COVID, but we'll see if that changes in Game 6 or if it's forced to Game 7. We'll see it then. Game 6 is tonight, so that's going to be a fun one for a lot of NBA fans to watch in this, what has become a good series. We thought the series was going to be over in 5, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, first things first, I still got the Suns winning this series, and I'm still picking the Suns to win the NBA Finals at this point. But it's really one of those things where I think the Clippers are doing a good job hanging around still and putting themselves in a position to try to win. And honestly, I thought when they said, you know, Zubac was out, I thought DeAndre Ayton was going to kind of just destroy the Clippers and kind of get anything he wanted. And he had himself a good game, but I thought he was going to have a much bigger game. And like I said, a defining moment, especially with the Clippers center out. And he just kind of really didn't do that. Instead, the guy that stole the spotlight was Paul George, putting up those big numbers, almost a triple-double with 41 points. So it was just huge. But, you know, a quick note, like you said, you brought up Reggie Jackson, who I think has played a great playoffs and is really one of those role players that every NBA player, every NBA team needs. But one of the funny things is he looks like a hip hop artist called Bobby Shmurda. And there's a funny clip of him at the free throw line with the crowd actually chanting out Bobby Shmurda, and he does the shmoney dance, which is one of this guy's dances. So Reggie Jackson, you know, great, you know, fan favorite, I would say at this point in the NBA, but he's doing a great job, obviously, here in the playoffs and hit some big shots and had a couple of great drives and had a big dunk down the stretch there too. That really was helping the Clippers out. So, yeah, he's chipping in as much as he needs to kind of help this team go along. But obviously, I mean, the main really cog right now is Paul George. And if he can keep that up, it's going to keep them in the series. But like I said, still got the Suns winning. I got probably the Suns winning tonight, you know, fast-tracking themselves to the NBA Finals.